welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you're new here. My name is Carly and I share motherhood lifestyle content as well as cleaning motivation and daily vlogs. So if you're interested in those types of videos, definitely hit the subscribe button and stick around because I share my whole life with you guys. I'm super active on Instagram, so definitely go follow me on there to get updates on my YouTube channel and just see my daily life because I post a lot more on my Instagram. I just filmed my breastfeeding video, so if you haven't seen that, it'll come up after this. But if everything looks the same, it is the same. I tried to change my shirt. I put these glasses on, so I threw these on, changed my shirt to see if like I could throw you guys off, but it's the same day. I recorded that video like 5 minutes ago. Okay, so today I am bringing to you guys my birth stories for both of my girls. And I wish so badly that I did YouTube when I was pregnant for both of them and that I shared their birth stories right off the bat, because honestly, like, I remember everything, but I wish I would have sat down and recorded those feelings that I was having fresh out the gate of giving birth to my two girls. So for those of you who do not know, I have a 3.5-year-old Charlotte and a 14-month-old Zoe. I had an epidural birth with Charlotte and I had a natural unmedicated birth with Zoe. So you're kind of going to get to see the difference in my personal experience between having a natural and an epidural birth. I'm just going to jump right in and get started with Charlotte's birth story. And I'm really excited because like she's getting so big and she's such a little kid now. She's not a baby or a toddler anymore. And so like thinking back on when she was just a tiny little newborn makes me like, I'm already tearing up. Like it makes me want to cry. Okay, so rewind the clock to 2016. I was due August 12th, 2016 with Charlotte. And she was born on August 10th, 2016. I was one of those people who was super neurotic during my pregnancies. I thought literally everything was wrong. And I think that explains itself in the fact that we did have 2 losses before we were blessed with Charlotte. So I was just very, very anxious my whole pregnancy. And then once I got to like 38 weeks, I was so done. I was like, let's get this baby out. I want to meet her right now. And yeah, that didn't happen. I was not progressed in any way, shape, or form at my 38-week appointment. And I was really discouraged at my appointments because they weren't necessarily, like they wouldn't check me. They didn't check me for the first time until I was 38 weeks. So from 36 and 37 weeks, those 2 appointments, they wouldn't check me and they're like, it's not necessary. But I personally want to know. I know that there's some people out there who don't want to know if they're progressing or not because it can make them extra anxious. But I was like anxious not knowing if I was progressing or not. Well, then I got checked at my 38-week appointment, and I think it was 38 weeks and I want to say 1 or 2 days. And I was literally nothing. I was barely a 1. Like she said, she could barely do anything. And so I felt like my body wasn't going to go into labor and so I felt like I was going to go overdue, which don't feel that way. It was my first baby. Like things don't feel that way if you're 38 weeks and not progressed at all. Okay, so at my 38-week appointment, I was just a 1, barely, like not, I think I was about half a centimeter. I don't even think I was a full 1. And then I went back in at my 39-week appointment and I was barely a 1. And I was getting very discouraged. I was bawling, I was crying. And I think what really hit me the most is that they were like, okay, well, we'll set your induction date. Well, the induction date was for August 17th. So it would have been 5 days after she was due. And that just like broke my heart because I was like, I cannot be pregnant for another, 10 days, I think it was. But I was a mess and I was like, I cannot be pregnant that much longer. So then I was like, can I just like come in I think it was like 39 weeks and 4 days when I came back in, and I was still a 1, or I think it was a 1 and but she after she checked me, it was a little bit painful. Like it was a lot of pressure, but it wasn't like it wasn't painful. It was just a lot of pressure. and she was like, I swept your membranes a little bit. She said a little bit. So I don't know if like she didn't do a full membrane sweep and that's why it didn't hurt, because I know a lot of people say it hurts, but in my case it didn't. And I remember my mom saying that my older sister, when she went into labor with my niece, it was her first baby as well, and she was not progressing at all. They did a membrane sweep, and she went into labor that night with literally no symptoms before that of labor coming. She went into labor that night after her membrane sweep. So I was like, yeah, baby's coming today. Well, then all day I was like symptom spotting, trying to figure out like if I was in labor or not. And nothing was happening. Like I literally told my mom towards the end of the night when I was going on like my brisk walk that I took every single day to try to go into labor, I was like, it's just not happening. Like, I don't think I'm gonna go into labor tonight. I told her, I was like, nothing, I don't think anything's happening, because I did not feel any different. Well, that day also, we went off-roading in my husband's truck, and I was like, let's just bounce this baby out. And so we did that. It was the middle of August in Tennessee, okay? It is like dripping wet, humidity, 100 degrees outside. He has no AC in his truck, but I was like, we are getting this baby out. We are getting her out today. And we got stuck, and then we had to sit for an hour and wait for someone to come pull us out. So don't recommend that, but it did work, because that night at 11 o'clock, I had my first contraction. And I want to also say my entire pregnancy, after 14 weeks, I had Braxton Hicks contractions. And I knew the difference between a Braxton Hicks and a real one once I actually had a real contraction. But up until this point, I had no actual painful contractions. At 11, I started feeling what felt like strong Braxton Hicks, but almost painful. They weren't painful yet, but it was way more pressure. I also feel all of my contractions up in my chest, and I don't know why, and my doctors don't know why. I know a lot of other people have felt this too. Not a lot, it's like a small percentage of women feel this. And it's like the way that my uterus, like once it contractions, like pushes on my esophagus or something. I don't know the science behind it, but it makes me so nauseous, and it makes me feel like I have a shortness of breath and almost like your heart skips a beat. Like, it is really scary feeling. But after I had that feeling in both of my pregnancies, I wasn't really worried about it anymore, because she did tell me that it was nothing to be alarmed. I had a lot of heartburn throughout my pregnancies, and I think that kind of like correlates together with my kind of contractions that I feel in my chest. Okay, so let me look at my notes, because this was a long time ago, it feels like. Okay, so I had my first real contraction at 11 o'clock that night, and I was so pumped, but then I was also like, I'm not gonna get too excited because it doesn't hurt. So I thought maybe they were just like stronger Braxton Hicks, and I was able to go to sleep. I fell asleep eventually, but then I got woken up at like around 3 in the morning with actual like painful contractions, and I couldn't go back to sleep. And they said, once you can't sleep through your contractions, those are real contractions. So I was like, yes, this is the start of something, I think. I was really nervous to be that girl who had never had a baby before, that first time mom that goes into the hospital, gets sent home, you're not really in labor, you know, kind of thing. Because like I said, I was very anxious, and I had already been to the labor and delivery 2 times because I was worried something was wrong. So I feel like they already knew me, and I was scared they weren't going to take me seriously, and they thought like, it's just a first time mom, she's not actually in labor, she doesn't know what she's talking about, you know? Every first time mom's fear, you know? So I called my mom, and I was instantly like, I was pacing up and down the hallway, I was bouncing on my birthing ball. My goal with this pregnancy was to have a natural birth, no medication, but I was not opposed to having an epidural. It was one of those things where I told Wayne, I was like, I want to try my hardest, and if I can't, whatever, that's perfectly fine, I'll get an epidural. Well, my contractions started picking up extremely quickly. I think the first few were 7 minutes apart, and then they got down to 5 minutes apart for a few, and then it was just consistently 3 to 5 minutes apart. And so when they tell you like 10 minutes apart or something with your first baby, you need to like call, and after like, I don't remember the exact thing, but I remember it was like 5 or 10 minutes apart, that you can call and like talk to someone about it. and they were consistent. So I told my mom, and she's like, honey, you're in labor, like you're in real labor. Because I didn't believe her. I was like, these hurt. And then she heard me like doing that like deep moan that you do when you are in labor. And she's like, that's how I know you're really in labor, is because you're doing like the deep, super, super attractive moan that you do, like that I do anyways when I'm in labor, having real contractions, and I could not talk through them. So I tried to hold out as long as possible, because everyone says try to labor at home as long as you can. I was in so much pain, and for some reason, even though I didn't want an epidural, I felt like if I went to the hospital, I don't know, it would be better, like, I don't know. So we went at around 7 o'clock. I think it was like between 7 and 7:30. Also, I woke Wayne up like right off the bat after I called my mom, and I was like, I'm in labor. So it definitely made him just like sit there and watch me be in pain. So we went in around 7, and mind you, the day before when I got my membrane sweep, I was only 1.5, barely a 1.5. And I don't know how much effaced I was. They didn't tell me that. I got checked and I was barely a 3. And so the doctor told me, she's like, you're only a 3, so we can't keep you because you're not like in active labor, and baby might come tomorrow, might come in the next week. And I'm like, what? Like, you are not sending me home right now. I knew I was in labor because of the pain I was in. And I was like, well, my contractions are so close together. How are you gonna like send me home? They were literally consistently after that point 3 minutes apart. And you could see them on the monitor, like they were going off the chart. They were so painful. And she's like, it's just, we can't keep you. And looking back on it, I'm pretty sure that they just didn't have room for me, because this was at Bach, Blanchfield Medical Army Hospital, on Fort Campbell. I really just don't think they had enough room for me, because we were hearing like the baby little like chime that goes off every time a baby's born, like constantly when we were in there having Charlotte. So they sent us home. I'm like bawling, I'm a mess. We get home, and in the car, that is so excruciating. We had 3 car rides while I was in labor for Charlotte, and having contractions in the car, like I literally could have, like, oh, it was so bad. So I had the drive to the hospital, the drive back, and we lived about, I want to say like 7 minutes from the hospital, and we had to go through the gate to get on base because we lived off base. And so like they're seeing me in crazy, like the gate guards are seeing me in like excruciating pain and labor, and they're like, go get to the hospital now. So we go home. I bounce on my ball while I'm like bawling my eyes out, talking to my mom and Wayne. Meanwhile, that first time I called my mom, she was in Ohio, and her and my stepdad, as soon as I called her at 3 in the morning, started driving to us, because she's like, I know you're in real labor, they sent you home, but like you're in real labor. So they started driving to Tennessee, which was about a 6.5 hour to 7 hour drive, and they got there in like 6 hours. It was crazy. But I was at home for about 45 minutes laboring. And I also was in the shower at some point. I think this was before we went the first time. I tried to take a shower, and that really, really did help, that kind of pain. But it was also like I was constantly like back and forth on the toilet, because, you know, like that's how you know you're in labor too, because your body just cleans itself out. I tried to stay home longer, and I'm like, babe, I can't do this. Like, we have to go back. I know I am progressing. I have to be. Like, I can't handle this pain. Also, I was kind of stuffed up, so the whole breathing through my contractions thing it wasn't working. Like, I could not breathe in through my nose hardly, because my allergies in Tennessee were crazy. I wasn't sick, but like my allergies were pretty bad. Okay, so then we make our way back to the hospital, and it is like, I think by the time we left the hospital, it was like almost 8, and then I labored at home for like 45 minutes, and then it's like 9:30 when we get back to the hospital, and we get in there, and I'm like, I know you just sent me home, but like, you have to check me again. I cannot do this. They're walking me to my room, and I have to stop every like 30 seconds because it felt like my contractions were so close together. They were about 1 to 2 minutes apart after we got home, and I was laboring at home. We got back, and I was holding myself against the wall with my eyes closed, going through these contractions. And I was in like one of the first few triage rooms, and I could barely make it to there. So I get up on the table, they check me in triage, and I am almost a 6. within an hour of them checking me the last time, or a little over an hour. I'm almost to 6. So I'm like, yeah, bitches, I was in labor. Like, I knew it. And so that gave me like, oh, it made me so happy. But while I'm laying there in triage, I was in triage for an hour, okay? People were walking in, and this is something I will never forget from Charlotte's birth. I'm laying in triage, and there's this little table, because they're not like individual triage rooms. It's like a room with curtains, and then like they have other stuff. Well, there was a table with like a little microscope, and a girl comes in, and she's just like puts one of the little things on the microscope and looking at it, and I'm like in labor. What's happening? I don't know. That's like, it's really unnecessary detail, but it's something I will never forget from her birth. She leaves, new doctor comes in. Not my doctor, I had a midwife. Not my midwife, but she was the doctor that was on call, and she was incredible. She was so nice, and she was like, is this your first baby? And I said, yeah, and she's like, oh my gosh, you're laboring so well, which gave me so much encouragement, because I felt I was in so much pain, you know? And she gave me so much encouragement, because she was like, you're doing a really good job, because I was trying not to, like, when I'm in labor, I didn't want anyone to touch me. I didn't want Wayne to even like talk. I wanted like complete silence, and just to like try and get through the contractions by myself. Well, I told Wayne when we were in triage, because it was taking forever to get to our room. I was so uncomfortable. I was scared. I could hardly breathe through my contractions. That was like the scariest part, is like I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I was getting very nauseous. So I was like, I want an epidural now. He asked the lady, and she's like, you can't get an epidural while you're in triage. You have to wait till we get to your room, but we'll call it up for you to like make sure he's ready to come in. Well, while I was in triage, my mom and my stepdad arrived. And so my husband had to leave, go to the front gate and get them in with like a visitor's pass. And so I was laboring by myself for a little while, but when I sent him out there, I told him, I was like, please tell my mom not to mention an epidural, because she didn't have an epidural with all 3 of us, and then my younger sister, she did have an epidural. So out of the 4 of us, she only had one, and she had it at her last one, and she told me she hated it. So I was super nervous. I didn't want to get it. I was really scared to get it, even though like you're in so much pain. You're like, I was scared for them to stick a needle in my back. But I also felt like people don't feel like this. If you want to get an epidural when you are pregnant and you're giving birth, get a freaking epidural. There's no shame in it, but I felt like, I don't know, like I was like letting her down if I didn't get an epidural, which is stupid. Obviously, she didn't care if I got an epidural or not. I was birthing a child, like I was birthing a human. She didn't care if I got an epidural or not. But I told him, I was like, please don't let them mention anything about an epidural. I'm getting it. I just want to like relax. So I got it once we got into the room. And then right after I got it, my mom and my stepdad were able to come in. And so it was incredible having my mom there. She is literally like the best birthing coach ever. She just like, she talks you through it, everything. That she was just incredible in there. And Wayne did so well. He loves that kind of stuff. He loves the whole like process of childbirth, and blood doesn't freak him out or anything. So once I was in my room, I kind of was like, they asked me if I wanted to get my water broke or if I wanted to sleep, because I hadn't progressed much. I was 6.5 when I got my epidural, and when I was in the room. She's like, I'm gonna let you rest a little bit, because I hadn't slept since 3 in the morning, like I was up. And so she let me rest a little bit, and then she came in about 2 hours later, and I wasn't progressed at all. And so she was like, okay, I'm gonna break your water. Speaking of, in that 2 hours, I did not sleep. I was so amped up. I was ready to have her, so I wasn't sleeping, but I definitely was not in pain anymore once I got my epidural. And it was not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. It seriously felt like a tiny little buzz, like tiny little bee sting. And it's crazy feeling like having that medication like go down your body. It's like a cold wave through your body. It's crazy. But that's beside the fact. I had what was called, I think it was a walking epidural, so I couldn't actually walk, but I could move my feet, and I could feel pressure, and I could feel like when I needed to push and stuff. So once she broke my water, I progressed extremely fast, and after she broke my water, I had her within an hour. So they checked me and I was like an 8, and they said she had so much hair, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it was crazy they could see her, you know, and like Wayne got to see that she had hair. And then I noticed my mom looked over at me and I was shaking, and she's like, oh, she's in transition, because I wasn't able to feel the pain, you know, and like when I had my epidural. But at this point, when I was shaking, I could feel pain again, and so I was pushing my button to get like a more dosage of epidural, and it wasn't working. It wasn't like, and she's like, honey, I don't think it's gonna work anymore. You're at the point where you probably have to push. Like when you go through transition, you shake a lot and like get the chills and stuff, and it's the most painful part of labor is during transition, besides like pushing, which in my opinion, I don't think pushing hurt nearly as bad as transition. So after that, she went and got the doctor, and the nurse came in and checked me, and she's like, oh, yep, you're out of 10, like she's coming out. So the doctor came in so fast, like they were on top of it after I got out of triage. I was in triage for a long ass time. Once I got into my room, they were constantly like, it was amazing. So then she was like, okay, honey, like let's do a couple practice pushes before the doctor came in. And I did a couple, and then my mom's like, stop pushing, because she was coming out. So the nurse was like, yeah, we can't do any you got it, like you can do it. So then the doctor comes in, and she's like, all right, are you ready to push? And it's like such a surreal feeling. And I remember, this is gonna make me cry. I remember the whole time leading up to that, it felt like it wasn't real. I was like, there's no way I'm actually leaving this hospital with a healthy baby, because we had our 2 losses, and I was like, either something's gonna happen to me, which I know is totally morbid and like you shouldn't think this way, but in my mind, I was like, I could not believe that I was actually going to have a healthy baby. So I was like, something's gonna happen to one of us. Like that was what was going through my mind, and it was really sad to like think that I was thinking that way. But then once she said it was time to push, I was like, I was so scared, but I was also, it still wasn't real to me. Like it was like, she's a real baby, you know? So they held my legs up, and I held my own legs. And Wayne helped, and my mom helped. And I pushed 2 times, and she was out. And the doctor was like, stop pushing, because she didn't want me to tear. I ended up having 3rd-degree tears, I think, with Charlotte. It was very painful, but my mom was like, look down, like she's here. And I looked down, and I reached up and grabbed her, and I tried to like pull her onto me, but her cord was like super short. So I had to have her like on my stomach. But I just remember that feeling of having her on me, and I was like, the first thing I said was like, she's real. And she did not cry right away, which really scared me. And they're like, honey, she's fine. And then she started screaming, but I was freaked out when I did not hear her cry at first. And then I had her on me, and they didn't take her off of me for 2 hours. They let me just have skin to skin with her because she was healthy. She didn't need any immediate care or attention because she was perfectly fine. So they cleaned her nose and everything out while she was on me. And they also did like her vitamin K shot and all of that stuff that they needed to do while she was on me. So they didn't actually take her to weigh her and measure her until she was about 2.5 hours old, because after that 2 hours of me doing skin to skin, Wayne got to do skin to skin, which was amazing. And then we called them in to do everything. And Charlotte was born at a healthy 7 pounds even. She was 20.5 inches long. So she had I'm gonna insert some pictures of her when she was a fresh newborn, like her fresh 48 hours on this earth. But yeah, that is my labor and delivery story with Charlotte. I also want to throw in there that my epidural was amazing, and after having her, I was able to get up and walk to the bathroom and use the bathroom and everything before we got sent to our recovery room, and I was able to walk to the recovery room. So my epidural experience was really amazing, and I had no problems with it. I had a really incredible birth experience and epidural experience with Charlotte. So this video is already really long, so I want to go ahead and end this one here, and then I will do Zoe's natural birth story in a separate video. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know below like your kind of birth stories, if you had an epidural or a natural birth, your experience. I would love to hear it and chat about it with you guys. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in my next one.
I lose my breath whenever I see you. You stole my heart, what is it that you do? My life was great till you added colors. Like the moon needs the sun, we don't care about the others. You set my world on fire. You're my heart's desire. I just wanna love you, just wanna hold you, just wanna be with you till we grow old. Please tell me you'll stay